welcome to the Mill Creek Government Channel. I'm Judy Zelina, and joining us on our program today, we have Joe Haloti.
Hi.
Welcome to the program, Joe.
Thank
and
you.
He is with CSA, which is Celiac Sprue Association, which is a subject we're going to be talking about today, celiac disease.
Yes.
Now, I'm really not familiar with this. I have heard a little bit about it, but Joe's involved with the organization, and he's going to let us know a little bit more about it.
Certainly. Thank you for having me. I appreciate being here.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Joe, first off, give us a brief history of CSA.
Yes, CSA is a national organization, the Celiac Sprue Association, and we formed a chapter in 2007, which is Celiac Sprue Association, Chapter 135. And prior to that, in 2001, there was the gluten-free support group that was here, and they were actually the pioneers. They formed in 2001, then 6 years later in 2007, some of us formed the Celiac Sprue Association, Chapter 135.
So you guys all came together?
Yes, we all came together last year, and we have a monthly meeting. And more information is on our website, and I'll give that to you later on, as far as the monthly meeting. But yes, we came together, and we've done a lot of great things for the community.
Okay, now Joe, how did you get involved in this?
Well, I was diagnosed with celiac disease in 2003, and I kind of fly under the radar when it comes to being a volunteer. But about 6 years ago, my oldest daughter was diagnosed with celiac disease, and my wife said, "You need to be an advocate and get out there more." And so that's how I became involved personally with the organization.
So personally touched your life. Okay, tell some of our viewers who are not familiar with celiac disease. What is celiac disease?
Celiac disease is an autoimmune disease. What it does, it affects the villi, which are in the small intestine in your body, and basically gluten, which is a protein, comes into your body, and your body has an adverse reaction to it, and it comes in and it'll basically act like a lawnmower and mow down the villi. Villi are hair follicles in your small intestine that when food comes in there, it takes the nutrients out of the food and sends it through your body. What happens with celiac disease is the protein, gluten, comes in there. Your body has, as I mentioned, an adverse effect, and it attacks the villi and mows it down, and the nutrition cannot get in your body. You become malnourished, and there's malabsorption that's caused.
Oh my goodness.
So you start to become anemic, and you lose weight, and you have other varying ailments that come with that, which we can discuss throughout the show.
Okay, then what are the symptoms? I mean, how do I know if I have celiac disease or I just ate something that just didn't agree with me? Yeah,
it's more chronic. It's day to day. The interesting thing and the unique thing about celiac disease, and as we're evolving in the last 10 years with diagnosing this disease, there's a few things that you can get from the CSA, Celiac Sprue Association's website. It talks about the symptoms, and it says here the symptoms of celiac disease vary so widely among patients that there is no such thing as a typical celiac. You could have abdominal cramping, bloating, back pain. There could be things like diarrhea, constipation, dehydration. There's also migraines. There's fatigue. In children, there could be irritability, maybe lack of focus. The standard problem is gastro issues that come up.
All right.
For me personally, what happened in 2003 was I was having severe gastro problems where there was pain in my abdominal region. I was scoped, I was endoscopy, and they did a biopsy, and they determined that I had celiac disease. And since then, I've been on a gluten-free diet. But we have so many people in our group that have a variety of different ailments. The other interesting thing about it is it could be asymptomatic. You may have celiac disease, not have any of the symptoms, but the damage could still be done to your system. I was 38 years old when I was diagnosed, so for a long time I didn't even know I had it. And the other thing, which they're still trying to analyze, is the triggering effect. Is it an environmental one? Is it stress that causes it? Because is it laying dormant in your body for a certain amount of time, and then all of a sudden it's triggered. My daughter didn't show signs. She was a little irritable, but she wasn't really showing any gastro signs. There are people in their 50s, their 60s, their 70s that are diagnosed with the disease. But if you're running into these standard symptoms where you have gastro pain, or you're eating a lot of food, you're consuming a lot of wheat, rye, barley, and you're losing weight. That was another thing that I was doing, eating and losing weight, and that equation didn't make sense. Because normally when you eat, you gain weight, and I was doing the opposite. But basically what I was doing was poisoning my body, as a lot of celiacs are when they're consuming gluten.
Because no nutrients were getting into your body, is what you're
Precisely.
saying.
If you ever seen a child malabsorbed and you get the distant belly, I wasn't to that point, but there are a lot of people that get to that point where they're not getting the nutrition, and it could be deadly. I mean, you're killing yourself down the road. A strict adherence of the diet is important. I'm not a medical professional. I don't claim to be that, but from what I've read, from what I've experienced personally, my health has increased and has become so much better being on the gluten-free diet.
They certainly don't make it easy in diagnosing, since the symptoms vary so much. Well, all right, what if I don't have any symptoms? How would I know? Who should be tested? Well, there is a test. You said
yes.
that you were tested. First off, what tests are involved?
Very good question. The first test that's involved is a blood test, and that will determine if you have signs of celiac disease. And I won't get into the medical part of IgG
Can
and
I just
IgA.
ask a quick question?
Certainly.
Is this a routine blood exam that I would go for my doctor, or it's a specific one?
It's a specific one.
Okay.
It's funny because with my daughter, her physician had wanted some information on what exactly that test would be. So it's not your standard blood test that you do when you go for your physical. But some of the signs, some of the testing, like if you are, if any of your parents, if your children are celiac, the first degree relative is celiac or gluten intolerant, that's when you want to take that test and have that checked out and be an advocate and push maybe a little harder with your doctor and say, look, I'd like to have this test because I'm showing signs of celiac disease. Just because you have some of the symptoms that I mentioned doesn't mean that you have celiac disease. It's a very tricky disease. In the last 7 or 8 years, 10 years, more and more U.S. doctors are starting to become familiar with the testing process.
Okay.
So getting back to your question, blood test first.
All right.
And second thing is, if it does show that there are signs of celiac disease, the endoscopy is the next test.
Okay.
There is another test out there which I'm not too familiar with, and I have not had this done, is the gene test. And with the gene test, when you have that done, apparently it's just a swab. You go in and take some saliva. The importance of that is, I'll make it personal with my family dynamic. My oldest daughter is clinically diagnosed as a celiac, had the biopsy.
All right.
My other daughter had the biopsy and came back negative. Now that goes back to, does that mean that it's laying dormant in her body and it may appear later on, or does she not have it? And this is where the gene test thing comes in that people have talked about. If you're tested and you are a carrier of the gene, then you may be predisposed to celiac disease down the road. If you're not a carrier, then there's a unlikelihood that you have that. From what I've heard, you need to talk to your doctor about that, though, to make sure.
Okay. It doesn't sound like it's very easy to live with celiac disease. Are there any treatments for that? Are there any medication, anything like that?
Just the gluten-free diet, strict adherence to the gluten-free diet, which is, it's becoming easier. For me, 8 years ago, a lot of these products weren't out there. And now they're starting to become easier, and they're starting to become more mainstream, which we'll get into too. The challenges are going out to eat and having a quote unquote normal meal, going to a restaurant. And there are more gluten-free menus that are out there now, but still you have to put your trust and your faith in the chef, the cook, the server, to make sure that there's no cross-contamination along the way. Just for example, a simple thing like a salad, to make sure that there's no croutons on it. you yourself, the celiac, when you're going out to eat, you need to make sure that you do your diligence and making sure that you communicate that effectively to your server, and they communicate it effectively to the chef. And sometimes if you're out of town or you're traveling, it's up to you to maybe make a call to a restaurant, or even locally, make a call to a restaurant beforehand, and call them during the off hours, the 2:30 to 3:30 or 4 o'clock, when they're not having the lunch crowd. We're not.
Not 5 o'clock.
Not 5 o'clock, not 5:01. But those little tips. I did a whole seminar at the national convention that we had here in Erie. I did a whole seminar on preparing yourself when you're dining out, when you travel, because I travel.
Okay.
So. Not to go off tangent, but when I do travel and I'm going to a specific city, I will look for the local chapter in that city, like Indianapolis or Chicago or wherever I may be going, or Cleveland or Pittsburgh.
All right.
The chapters are so helpful because it has that information. They have that information. For example, back to our chapter for a second. Our website, glutenfreeeriepa.com, has restaurants where to dine in Erie, so that it makes it easier for the people that are living here and the people that are visiting here to have a place to eat, to know where you can go. When I travel, and whether it's business or with family, I always try to do my diligence and call restaurants during those slow hours and talk to their chef, talk to their owner, talk to their manager, and say, do you offer a gluten-free menu? Can you tell me a little bit about it? What do you do? What do you have? So it better prepares you when you get into town. You know exactly where to go. I have a checklist, and then you Google it, you MapQuest it, you see where that restaurant is with relation to your hotel or where you're staying for that time period, so that you can be prepared. It's all those extra steps, but it pays off in the long run when you're preparing yourself.
We've come a long way in the 8 years since you've been diagnosed, haven't we?
Yeah,